Good morning. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 is where we're going to be this morning, looking at the idea of friendship and the value that friendship brings to our lives and brings to the world around us. It has become obvious to so many this year who true friends and family really are. You see that there's been a falling apart in some, a falling away. You see that others who you may not have been as close to before are now suddenly the ones that you rely on all the more. Friendship is something that if we are living the godly life, it should build as we go. It should be something that we start with this foundation and we continue to build on it each and every day of our lives. The value of a true friend we find in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, starting in verse 9 here. And I want to read all the way down through verse 16. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together and they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Better was a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who no longer knew how to take advice. For he went from prison to the throne through his own kingdom, and he had been born poor. I saw all the living who would move about under the sun, along with that youth who is to stand in the king's place. There was no end of all the people, all whom he led. Yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and striving under the wind. So we look at the idea there in verses 9 through 12 about the value of a true friend and about what that friendship looks like on both ends, the one who is offering the friendship and the one who is receiving it. And we see that there's a benefit in both situations. And we move on to verse 13 there, and he talks about the value of leadership and the folly of a leader that will not learn, the folly of a leader that will not listen, that will not continue to progress, will not continue to grow in knowledge. And I want to look at both of them this morning. Loneliness is absolutely real, especially to those who have no comforter. The ones that either are oppressed or being the oppressor. The one who looks around and does not have that person to say, I understand. Or to say, you know what, I don't understand, but I'm here anyway. I don't know what you're going through, but I'll sit and listen. I will offer a shoulder, I'll offer an ear. And for the person who does not have that, loneliness is extremely real. Loneliness is extremely real this time of year. You see so many people this time of year who struggle with seasonal depression, who struggle with the holidays, who struggle with the idea that the ones they want to be around, they can't. Or the ones they would desire to be with choose not to be with them. And it is something where people struggle. We have seen this more in this year than I remember, honestly. And so many things about this year are different, and yet they maybe not be that much different other than we're just taking note of it. You see or saw for a long time people who were isolated from the rest of the world. And you saw the effects that had on them. I saw a report this week of another teenager who committed suicide because of issues of dealing with depression and isolation. It is real. But what is also real is that so often we are alone because of our choices. Because we consume our lives with work, with school, with quote-unquote life. With things that do not involve interaction with other people. But we fail to consider the why. Why am I filling up my life with all of this? Why am I filling up all of my time and not having that close companionship? What have I chosen instead, and what is it doing to me? So often the why is the simple fact that we don't know how to open up. Or we're afraid to open up. We've been hurt in the past and we don't want it to happen again. We've been rejected in the past and we're scared of it happening again. We've experienced loss in the past, either because somebody has passed away or because somebody has moved on or because somebody has been taken from our lives against our will, and we are scared to open ourselves up again. So we consume ourselves with all of the other stuff. If I put enough stuff into my day, then I do not have to get close to somebody else. And it's extremely real. But at the end of the day, you're still lonely. At the end of the day, you're still struggling. At the end of the day, that loss is still there and you have not dealt with it. God gives us a great example and a great lesson and a great, for lack of a better word, formula here in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 about how to deal with this type of stuff. And it involves the understanding that two are better than one. That where life is concerned, there is safety in numbers and there's strength in numbers. Sometimes we hear this quoted at weddings, that two are better than one, that the understanding that a cord woven together is going to be stronger, and that when we weave God into this marriage, it's going to be better. And that's absolutely true. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 is not necessarily about that wedding. It's not about that marriage. It's not about that covenant. But it does apply. The best marriages, if you'll look around, are those that are built on friendships. The ones that started out with building that firm foundation, building that relationship, getting to know each other, understanding what what makes that other person click, understanding what makes the world go around, understanding how each other are going to interact. It's a good start. Solomon's benefits of friendship in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 certainly fall in line with what we see in Ephesians chapter 5 or in Titus chapter 2. And, how much easier is it to live out Ephesians chapter 5 if that relationship, if that marriage is built on friendship? Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. It's easier to be in that submissive role if you understand your husband is your best friend and he has your best interest in mind. Titus chapter 2 verse 4, and so train the young women to love their husbands and children. Again, if your husband is your friend, if your wife is a friend, if your children are, you value them as friends, and understand the role as a parent, you have to step out of that friend role at times, but you are still friends. How much stronger is this relationship? So yes, I can see why this is quoted at weddings. It applies. But it applies so much more to just life in general. It applies so much more to us leaving this building and going back out into the world and understanding that we have a world full of sin that we have to face. We have a world full of heartache that we have to face. There is going to be struggles, there's going to be strife, and that we need Christian friends. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 9. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. There is a value and a helpfulness in the idea of pairs. If you watch as Christ lived on this earth, if you watch how he directed those who followed him, we see him send out the 12 and the 72, what? 2 by 2. Mark chapter 6 verse 7, and he called the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2. And give them authority over the unclean spirits. There's a reason. He did not say, you go by yourself and you go deal with the world over here. You go handle all of that struggle and that strife and all of that temptation alone. Luke chapter 10, verse 1. And this the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them on ahead of him, 2 by 2, into every town and place where he himself was about to go. So he knows what his agenda is. He knows where he's about to travel. He knows where he's about to teach. And he says, I've got 72 over here. I'm going to send you out 2 at a time. You're going to go together. And I want you to go before me and prepare the way. But I do not expect, nor do I want you to do it alone. I am sending you out together. Scripture is absolutely packed with the examples of what godly friendships look like and the value therein. You see David and Jonathan, you see Elijah and Elisha, Ruth and Naomi. Paul, in all of his journeys, took somebody with him. Barnabas, Silas, Timothy, Luke. He always had somebody by his side when it was possible to help strengthen him and to make sure that he did not fall away. God consistently in Scripture says that you have to open yourself up to be a friend. And you have to open yourself up to allow a friend into your life. This life was not meant to be done alone. And I'm not talking about marriage. I'm talking about friendship. I'm talking about the understanding that we all need somebody. 2 are better than 1. We all need a friend. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 24. A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. He says, look, don't surround yourself with everybody that you can possibly find. Keep your circle small. Limit the people who have access to you on that personal level. But understand that there is a friend who's closer than a brother. Understand that that is what you're looking for. Understand that there is value to be found in that. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 9. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. He said the value of a friend is they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to provide that good godly advice. They're going to reach out to you, and they're going to keep you in check. They're not going to let you drift off. They're not going to let you move away. You cannot get away with doing the stuff that you're not supposed to do. And as Proverbs chapter 27 verse 17 says, iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. He said that true friend is going to make you better. They are going to build you up. They're going to hold you accountable. They're going to make sure that you are living better tomorrow than you are today. They're going to make sure that you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing and not doing the things that you're not supposed to be. They are going to keep you on that straight and narrow. That's what a friendship is about where God is concerned. It's not about, and there's fun to be had. There's laughs to be had. There's enjoyment to be had. It's all a benefit of it. But where God is concerned, the primary benefit is the understanding that a true friend is going to help us get from this life into eternity with our soul intact, so that we're living in eternity with God. He says they have a good reward for their labor. I bet if I'd have been here yesterday, that ditch would have got dug a little faster and a little easier. Not because I'm a good ditch digger, but because two people working together can get it done a little bit faster. Now, in my defense, I told Randy that when he comes up here to let me know, and I'd meet him up here and help him. I guess Randy doesn't count me as a friend. I never heard from him. Either that or he's just stubborn. Or maybe he wanted to be out of the house a little bit longer. If he did it alone, it'd take him longer and he didn't have to go back home. But whatever the reason, if we would have been here together, it would have gone a little quicker. And that's the value of a friendship. The understanding that where physical labor is concerned, it works that way, and where spiritual labor is concerned, it works that way. When two people are working to meet a spiritual goal together, it's going to be easier to get there. Imagine that Bible study you're having with somebody, where you are needing to bounce ideas off somebody, where you're needing to ask questions, where you're needing to get feedback. Hey, this is where they're at in this. This is what I'm saying. What can I do differently? How can I help them? And then both of you sit down and study and learn and figure out the next move. Then both of you spend time in prayer. How much more work could we get done if we approach soul saving that way? Instead of saying, I got to go do it myself. Chapter 4, verse 10. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Physically or spiritually, we need somebody to pick us up. We need somebody to lift us up when we stumble. We need somebody to be there to say, get up, let's keep going. Do not give up on me. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 14, and we urge you, brothers, admonish the idle, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, be patient with them all. It says, if you see a brother not doing anything, you admonish him. Admonish him. Push them, pick them up. Help them to move forward. Help them when they've fallen. Give them the strength to continue. Woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. I'm here to tell you that should never be said of Christians. We should not be in this journey alone. Period. End of discussion. There is no reason that any of us is going through life spiritually alone. That's what the church is for. Understand, this is family. We're here for each other, or we should be. My actions, my thoughts, my words should never push another Christian to the point where they feel like they're in this alone. Where they feel like they can't come to me and say, this is what I'm struggling with, I need help. Where they can't say, this is where I'm at, how do we go from here to eternity? We should have friends in the church. Every one of us. Sometimes it's a simple text message, sometimes it's a phone call, sometimes it's going by and knocking on the door, but whatever it is, a Christian should never fall and it not be noticed. A Christian should never fall and not have somebody there to say, let me help you up. Let's do this together. We don't have the right to alienate somebody else. Chapter 4, verse 11. And again, if two lie together, they keep warm. And how can one keep warm alone? We don't think about that a whole lot. I mean, every one of us has got a heater somewhere. I mean, Randy's got heaters for his dogs. And that's a good thing if they're outside. So we don't think about this whole warmth thing alone a whole lot. But there's something to be said for him. It's a comfort. It is keeping warm, but it's also keeping comfortable and understanding that we're not going through this life alone. That even something as simple as being warm is better when there's two around. How can one be warm alone, he says. He said, look, share your life. Don't do it alone. Don't try and go through it. Don't try and push through this alone. And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. He said, go up against somebody face to face and you might win. One-on-one, you got a chance, he says. But if you go up against more than one, you may be in trouble. But if there's three of you, you can handle it. You can do this. There is safety in numbers where spirituality is concerned. understand this. It is harder to drift away from the church when somebody is holding you accountable. It is harder to drift away from the church when somebody is encouraging you. It is harder to drift away from the church when somebody is physically knocking on your door and saying, let's go. You're coming with me. You missed last week. I'm not going to let you miss this one. Let's do this together. That's probably the reason Christ sent out His disciples in pairs. Because, where Christianity is concerned, where spirituality is concerned, where biblical questions are concerned, we're all going to get in a situation where we don't have the right answer, where we don't know, or we don't know how to resist that temptation, or we're too weak to. But if somebody else is there with us, odds are they're going to know the answer. They're going to know where to find the answer, or they're going to know how to say, let's go, let's get out of this situation. We're not staying here to find out how long we can resist this temptation. We're leaving now. There's safety in numbers. Friend loves at all times, but a brother is born for adversity. Proverbs chapter 17, verse 17. Friend loves at all times. That's powerful. That is something to be desired. Something to be understood. When we are struggling with temptations, and understand this isn't if, it's when we are struggling with temptations. It will happen to each and every one of us. If we've got a godly friend there, it's so much easier to overcome those temptations. So much easier to say, you know what, you're right. Let's get out of here. Let's move. Let's do this. Let's do what is right. Hebrews chapter 3, starting in verse 12. Take care, brothers, lest there be any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. But exhort one another every day as long as it is called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. That's the value of the church. That is a value that it brings to day-to-day life, the understanding that we are not alone. Exhort one another, brothers, or exhort one another. Build one another up. Encourage one another so that you don't fall away, is what it says in the book of Hebrews. That is what the book of Hebrews is all about. Don't turn back to the old ways. Don't go back to what you had. Don't go back to what was there before. Christianity is better. God is better. The church is better. Salvation is better. He said, stick with the church. Stick with what you have here. And don't give up. Threefold cord is not quickly broken. There is a value in having two. Having that friend that walks with you. But it's the understanding that if that friend is a godly friend, it's more than just the two of you. It's more than just me and you. It's me, you, and God. It is this group. And we're in it together. How beautiful a thought is that? It's an illustration. It's the idea that a marriage founded on friendship and a friendship in God is so much stronger than a marriage founded in the world. And a friendship founded in God. Those friends we find in the body, those friends we find in church. That's where it's all about. Romans chapter 8, verse 31. What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? If you and me are standing with God, we will not lose. Plain and simple. We can't lose. The world cannot win against us. God is that powerful. And a friendship built on His word and His advice and His thought process is that powerful. Tonight we're going to pick up in verse 13 there. We're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about the understanding of the leaders that will and will not listen to God, and they will not listen to that godly advice. But I want you to understand this today. When you go back out into the world, do not do it alone. You got a friend. You got a friend in this church, you got a friend in Christ. All we have to do is reach out. Christ is there waiting right now. He says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." But He said, you got to come to me. He said, you got to submit yourself to me. You have to be willing to confess that you are a sinner, and you have to be buried in that watery grave of baptism. But once that happens, once you rise as a new creature, sins washed away, don't go back out into the world alone. Take Christ with you and take a godly friend with you. We're all in this together. We all want to get to heaven together, and we can. If you need the prayers of the church, if you need to put on Christ in baptism, if you need a friend to go back out into the world with, whatever your needs are, let's address them now as we stand and sing.